So, could you confirm your job title for me?
Sure. My job title is VP of Sales and Marketing for Zivid, which is a company I work for.
So, can you tell us what you do in your current job? What are the responsibilities of that job? And if it helps, you can describe a day in your life.
Okay. So the responsibilities of my job, I'm responsible for building the business for my company in the Americas, which includes North America and South America. And the reason it's important is because we're company, and we're small. We're some would say a startup, but I think we like to refer to ourselves as a scale up, which means that we're beyond that little infancy stage and we're trying to make revenue and become profitable. But my main responsibility is to build the market, define the market, and then um, search for customers, serve customers, be the voice of the customer towards our own company, and be the face of our company towards our customers.
So, what education do you need to go into marketing? And what did you study in college and why?
I think what you need and what I studied are probably two different things. Um, I I did not initially study any sort of business topics or major in anything related to business to go into marketing and sales initially. But during undergrad and my master's degrees, it was all engineering focused. So I did electrical and computer engineering and computer science for my bachelor's and master's, and that set me up, I guess, for my first few jobs to be to have a really solid technical base, which I guess I do. And then further on in my career, maybe 6, 7 years after I started my first job and graduated from my first graduate school, I decided to get a business degree when we lived in Chicago, and that's what really helped me get into the marketing and sales side. So initially, engineering helped with building a technical base, building credibility, practicing what I had learned in school, and then the business degree helped me jump over into sales and marketing.
So, what made you decide that you wanted to go into sales and marketing? Did you have other careers that you maybe thought of being? And
Yeah.
did you decide to do, sorry, did you decide to do that in college or high school?
So the regarding the careers,
Mhm.
uh, it's kind of switched over time. Um, when I was in high school, technology was always something I loved, and I thought engineering would be a good path for me because of the high interest in technology and gadgets and trying to figure out all the new cool stuff that I could tinker with. So engineering proved out to be pretty fun for me. Um, but then when I got into actually practicing that during my first few jobs, the type of engineering that I did was design engineering. And design engineering in my world was designing circuit boards that go in electronics, which was great. A lot of it, I learned a lot and got to contribute to some cool products that are out in the market even today. And that was interesting. And then I went further into the electronic space and I started working for chip companies, semiconductor companies. That was very exciting. I was a design engineer, a chip engineer, where I would design circuits that were integrated into these little chips. That was also very exciting. And those chips are used in wearable electronics today. They're used in the big server computers that are used by airlines and banks and huge financial institutions all around the world. So that's all really nice. But what I really figured out is there were a few times when working in the chip space, I got to work with the business guys. So I was a chip designer. I knew exactly how our chip worked. And then I started working with people that are closer and closer to the customer. And just because maybe they needed help with one particular feature and I happened to design that feature. So I would talk to the business people, the sales guys, the marketing guys, and I realized, well, my job, it was fun. I learned a lot, but it was mundane. I was doing the same thing every day, day after day, week after week, month after month. I was in my little office. I would get a technical spec. I would figure out how to design for it with the team I was on, and I would execute on the design, and then hand it over to somebody else to do verification and testing of that design. And then obviously some other team that I didn't even know would eventually get to take the full product and then sell it to customers or service to customers. So in these small interactions that were what we called customer facing, I realized, oh, that's pretty fun. You get to meet with customers, meet with other people, you get to have conversations. I never thought of myself as an outgoing person, at least back in high school. But when you're in a little room with your head down doing design for such a long time, I think I realized, oh, it would be nice to talk to other people, to have a more social aspect to the job. And I realized it could be done, especially if you were in sales and marketing. So that kind of drove me into that space.
So in your current job, do you find that you talk to people a lot more?
Yeah, the people I talk to would probably say I talk too much, but yeah, that's the whole job. That's the whole job. I have to somehow first, of course, listen to what the potential customers' care abouts are, what type of problems are they trying to solve, and then as they're speaking, I'm trying to understand and put myself in their shoes and trying to figure out how best to present what we do to help them solve the things that they care about. So yeah, there's a lot of listening, a lot of talking, a lot of thinking on the fly and figuring out how to present ourselves to best suit the customer's needs.
So after high school, do you remember which colleges you applied to and why?
I do. I remember a few of them. So I was still conflicted in high school whether I wanted to do medicine or engineering. And so I decided, well, why make a decision now? Why not just find a school that offers some sort of pre-medical path and some sort of technical path? So I grew up in Boston or Massachusetts, and the premier technical school is MIT, probably still is, and the premier medical school was Harvard. So those two were on my list. Um, the thing about Harvard was really good in sciences, law, business, and all the other things, but not so good from a technical point of view. Some might disagree with me. MIT, really good technical school, really good business school, and they at the time, from what I remember, they didn't offer a pre-medical path. So okay, and I had a college counselor. I went to a prep school for high school, so they helped you figure out what colleges you want to get into. They suggested Boston University, I remember, Vanderbilt, University of Massachusetts, Carnegie Mellon, which is where I eventually went to. And the reason I picked Carnegie Mellon I thought that they had a really good technical path and they also offered pre-medical. So it kind of fit both of my requirements and it also helped that I got in. So
So after college, what kind of jobs were available for you?
after college, well, the my major was electrical and computer engineering with computer science. So the demand was really high. It was it was relatively easy. I would think my class was small. My entire graduating class was little less than 100 people. So let's just say 100. And 24 of them got hired by Intel. So just it was a huge demand for relatively young chip designers, which is what I was. Um, I didn't want to work at Intel necessarily, but I did interview with Intel, and I ended up getting an offer for Intel in Portland or California, one of the two, Portland or in Northern California. And then many people, I don't know exactly, I remember 24 at Intel because it's such a big number. And then quite a few, including my roommates who were a couple of years older than me, they went to Cisco and Cisco, North Carolina, and in California. And I didn't know anything about Cisco. I always used to think of the SYSCO, Food Services Company. I didn't know anything about CISCO, but a young company, they had great promise. And I also interviewed there. And then came a company called Tandem. So I interviewed at Tandem. I think I eventually accepted a job at Tandem, and it was me along with I think 4 or 5 of my classmates. We all accepted a job at Tandem, and the reason I think the reason I accepted the job was that it was a design job right off the bat. Everybody coming out of my class wanted to do design. There were various aspects, but those who got to actually do design, that was coveted. There were surrounding jobs around design like verification, testing, simulation, support. So all those things were also available, all those types of jobs, but I was intrigued by the design job. So I took the Tandem job, number one. Number two is in California. Growing up in Boston, going to school in Pittsburgh, I was always in cold weather. I wanted to go someplace with nice weather. So California fit that bill. And then the pay was really good. It was the highest of all the other companies that I mentioned. So I made the decision to move out to California and embark on that adventure.
So in that job at Tandem, what did you do on a day-to-day basis?
Oh,
If you
well, I remember it was interesting at first because it was me and two of my friends that I was super close with, but they went on the sustaining engineering side. So it was a different building, different job title. And then a couple of my other friends, we did the same job. It was a design job for a brand new product and business unit that the company was creating. So it was very exciting because we got to define this new product from the bottom, from the ground up. And I think now looking back, that probably planted a seed in my head that defining and designing and creating something from the ground up that nobody else has done before was extremely exciting. So on a day-to-day basis, so I was a design engineer. So we had electrical design, which is what I did and my teammates. Then we would interface with mechanical engineering, production engineering, different facets of engineering, and we would all meet. It felt like we were meeting all day, every day, talking about, well, if we did this from an electrical standpoint as a part of the design, how did it affect the mechanical team? And the mechanical team would say, well, you picked this processor for the main brain of the system, but it produces a lot of heat. So because it produces a lot of heat, we have to make the box this big. We have to have a fan, couple of fans. The air has to flow this way. So every little decision that we make from an electrical computer side had so many ramifications on the mechanical side, on the production side, on the test side. So it's really interesting and exciting to see all the various dependencies and relationships between the different facets of engineering. So what did I do on a day-to-day basis? Lots and lots of meetings. And so that was in those meetings, I got to contribute to some key decisions, but more than anything, just listening to all the other facets of engineering, project management, figuring out how to make decisions. That's what I learned almost every day. So that was the work part. And because I was the youngest person on the team, along with the other people that graduated with me, we were also had a lot of playtime, as they called it, where in the middle of the day they would set up ping pong matches, and that's kind of the Bay Area culture right now too. You play ping pong, you have basketball matches, and then come around 6 o'clock, the boss comes knocking on our doors. Hey, let's go to the gym. So there was a lot of work, a lot of hard work, and then a lot of playtime as well. So I remember that, and it proved to be a fun time.
So before you started working in sales and marketing, did you have a good idea of what they did? Was there anything that caught you by surprise when you started?
In sales and marketing,
Mhm.
yeah, I had a pretty good idea of what they did just by the definition of the words. But those few times when I was deep in the engineering role and I worked with some of the business people to support customers, then I got a much better sense of what do the business guys do in terms of um, in terms of interfacing with the customers and representing the company. And I really enjoyed that because I thought, I know what the companies do. I was part of the design, so I understand that part. I understand that technology. But what really turned me on to that was, one is the social aspect. You get to do something different every day. But the third biggest thing I realized is all the salespeople I was had the opportunity to tag along with, to work with, and learn from. Almost all of them weren't engineers. They were professional salespeople, professional marketing people. And I realized, well, I went to a pretty good engineering school. I did design, I did engineering. That could be a differentiator because when you go into a customer, when I was going into these customer meetings with these salespeople, um, I would talk to the business person or sales guy would talk to the customer, and they'd have their very basic high level conversation. How are you doing today? Hope you had a nice weekend. How's the weather? What movies have you watched? Like all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, I could do that. And then when they started getting to the nitty gritty part of the product, project, requirements, all that kind of stuff, they would turn the conversation to me because I was technical. It's like, oh, I understand now. So I thought, well, if I went into sales and marketing, I would have it would be a big differentiator for me to have the solid technical background. And I think I could establish credibility right off the bat with the customers, which is exactly what happened when I went into that role. So then, as when I was a sales guy, with a technical background, you sit in front of the customer and right off the bat, because there's always a feeling out process with any two people, whether it's you meet somebody on the street and you have a conversation, or it's in the business setting or in a social setting, there's always this little bit of feeling out process. Oh, where are you from? Where do you go to school? Like you're just trying to feel somebody out, right? In the business world, it works just like that. The person across the table is asking, where did you go to school? What company did you come from? They're trying to figure out, can they trust you? That's the bottom line. So I remember so often that the other person on the side of the table would be a very smart, knowledgeable design engineer, and they're looking at me with the title on my card said it just says sales. Like, oh, here's another sales guy. Uh, what do you do? Where did you come from? So as soon as I said, well, I have a couple of engineering degrees. I've done design for so many years. All of a sudden, the trust factor is set, and then you start to build credibility because then they start asking questions about very detailed technical questions. And now when I have answers for them, like, oh, okay, I can believe this guy because he's been in my shoes before. So that helped quite a bit. So that was new to me. I didn't expect it. I expected the differentiation to be there. I didn't expect that the credibility and trust factor would be so strong. And so that was a nice surprise.
So, in your current job, what skills or personality traits do you think someone needs to succeed?
In my current job, it's still sales and marketing. It's still very technical. The difference is now I'm old, so I have people on my team. I help build the team, and so now it's a lot of, I guess, leadership skills, team building skills, trying to get people to do things. Well, trying to set a vision for people, and then everyone march down that vision, keep people motivated. So it's more leadership and management as opposed to actually doing the day to day work. Although I still do the day to day work, I like it, and I'm also responsible for a team. So both of them combined. I guess the business school, I guess the classes I took in business school helped with that.
Is there anything you dislike or wish you could change about your job?
About my job. Well, I don't know about dislike or change. I'll tell you some of the challenges.
Mhm.
So some of the challenges that I face is my company is Norwegian, so which means they're 7 hours away most of the year. There are a couple of weeks where they're 6 hours away, but still the time difference is huge. And we're, they're 7 hours away. We're small. All the engineering and R&D is consolidated in Norway. So being remote and in the satellite office, one of the challenges is to have enough knowledge of the R&D and technology so that credibility and trust factor can continue with the customers in the Americas. So if I just give bits and pieces of information, and I didn't design the systems that we make. In my previous life, I did design the systems, then I went into sales for those same systems. So I knew it inside out. In this case, I didn't know it inside out. So one of the things, so that was a huge challenge. What helped was spending 3 months and moving to Norway, working with the engineers, understanding the technology from the CTO, and then coming back and taking all that information and developing my own stories around that. And that helped quite a bit. So that was a challenge in the beginning. These days, I think the biggest challenge is to um, find the market and find the customers. So that's just a process that I think will take time because it's such a young market. And the market is robotics, specifically for industrial automation. So it's a young market. It has high potential, high growth. But I say the biggest challenge right now is to define the market and find the customers.
So, how do you see the industry changing over maybe like the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, here I can tell. I hope it changes. I think if you just go, so today is time equals zero. So 5 years ago, most they did have industrial robots doing routine tasks, um, like inspection of is inspecting a product, and if the product is supposed to have a couple of knobs and a hole in specific locations, well then it passes on a conveyor. A camera takes a picture. It's like, yep, two knobs and a hole is good to go. Or maybe it's not even a camera. Maybe it's a human being that says inspects the box. Yep, that looks right. Next, next, next. It's just doing quick inspection to make sure that the product is looks the way it's supposed to. That's maybe, let's just say that was 5 years ago. And then as 5 years has come to today, maybe they use some sort of cameras and some type of robots. And what I expect 5 years from now, they will use robots. They will use types of cameras that we make. I think the difference is 5 years ago, there were robots in automation. Those robots did very specific defined tasks, and the robots were blind, right? They couldn't see exactly what they were doing. So time has progressed. They have gotten some eyes, maybe in two dimension, maybe not even with color. So they had a little bit of idea of what they were looking at. And out came Zivid, my company. Now we have 3D color vision. So our goal is to make robots have vision just like humans. So to give robots human-like vision. So now the robots can actually see what they're supposed to make decisions on. So I expect, I hope in 5 years that just becomes pervasive, that all robots will have vision that we provide, and they'll be able to do their tasks much better, and they'll be able to not replace human workers in factories, but augment human workers in factories. So if a human could do X amount of work with the help of vision and robotics, they'll be able to do X times 100. So that's the idea. That's what I hope happens in 5 years.
So did you say that you're the vice president of sales and marketing?
Yes.
Okay, so you probably didn't start out as that. So like, how do you go from like a salesman to the vice president?
Yeah, I think part of it is being in the right place at the right time. Um, Part of it is the relationships you build along the way, and then the part of it you just have to prove yourself. So when I was so way back um, in the sales role, we had the sales guy, and every sales guy or every couple of sales guys had an applications engineer associated with that office or that region that they were responsible for. So my first sales job was in Chicago. I was responsible for the north central region of the United States, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, maybe Iowa. Just basically, it's a very small region of the United States. And I was not a salesperson, but I was on the sales team for that region. I was the field application engineer. And what that means is I was technical, had an engineering degree, and even better that I had actual engineering hands-on experience, which I did. I used to be a chip designer. So I fit very nicely into the FAE role, they called it, field application engineer. And I supported our salespeople, I supported our customers. So a salesperson would say, okay, customer XYZ, uh, thanks for introducing us. Thanks for welcoming us into your office. Thanks for opening up this opportunity for us. What are your requirements? So the salesperson would get all that kicked off, and then they start talking about like deep technical requirements, which is I would help in that. So we call that pre-sales. And then let's say the customer said, okay, we'll use you guys. Um, we'll use your technology. And then when it comes to implement our technology into their product, that's another place I would step in. So that's called post-sales support. So if they had a question about our technology and maybe something not working right, maybe something needs to be fixed, they would use the field application engineer to do that as well. So over time, still had good technical background, but I was building up my business skills and commercial skills by working with customers day to day, every day, different customers solving different problems. And then eventually there was a sales opening, and I applied for it. And my I guess my sales pitch for myself was, I think I can talk to customers. I supported salespeople for X number of years, and I'm highly technical. I think I'd be a good fit, and I got the opportunity. And then in sales, you have a quota, or you have goals that you have to achieve, and the goals could be revenue, mostly revenue, unit sales, profit dollars, and there's many ways you can measure a salesperson, but primarily it's measuring how much business do you bring into the company. So of course, if you want to grow in that line of business, you have to meet your targets, sometimes exceed your targets on a regular basis, and that's probably what helped go from individual salesperson to where I am today.
So how is the work-life balance in marketing and sales? Like, do you have a lot of time to do other things outside of work, or do you have to ever like take home any work?
Well, the work-life balance is pretty jumbled throughout the day. I think some of that is due to the fact that we're a young company. Um, I work from home, as you can see,
Mm.
and I think those two aspects, they're prominent in my work-life balance. But then it's also your how you manage your own time. So I like a work-life balance. I like to do my work things when they need to be done, and I like to do my family things when they need to be done as well. And I'm fortunate enough to have that opportunity. I'm not working in an emergency room taking care of patients who come in and it's life critical. The one I think the one key thing in sales and marketing is you work according to the customer schedule. If the customer needs you, well, they need you and they need you now because to them it's an emergency. So I always take it from that standpoint. When the customers are working, I'm working. When the customers are off, well, then that gives me an opportunity to do administrative stuff or do family stuff, or that's my own time. So that's the way I look at it. But I'm really happy with the work-life balance in this line of work. I think it suits my personality, and it's exactly the what I would have wanted.
And lastly, do you have any advice to give to somebody who's thinking about going into sales, especially a high school student?
Yeah, I guess I think it depends on the industry you want to be a salesperson in. If you want to be a salesperson in technology, well, then I think it really helps to have a technical background. If you have a technical background, you have credibility. If you have credibility, you gain the trust of your customers. And I think it worked well for me. And almost everybody I hire on whichever teams I've established in the past, I always look for technical people. It's a proven recipe. It worked for myself. It works for all my teammates. And so that's what I would recommend. Pick the industry that you would like to be a salesperson in, and then work backwards and have the basic skills from an educational standpoint, so that when you get into the commercial world, you have credibility right off the bat. And then I would even recommend do some time, take some jobs where you practice those technical skills or the yeah technical or science skills, so that eventually you can move over to the business side.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.
All right.